In this Monster Hunter Wilds video, I'm going to be talking about my hands-on impressions with the game from Gamescom. I got to play this game just a few days ago for about an hour, 2 separate hunting expeditions. So let's get into what's new about the game, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and what you can expect from Monster Hunter Wilds. So the first thing you're going to notice about Monster Hunter Wilds when playing is how much more of a focus there is on using your mount this time around. We've had mounts before. This isn't a new concept necessarily, but you use it so much more in Monster Hunter Wilds. You not only use it for traversing the landscape, for climbing, you also use it for gliding over long distances. Another really cool feature about it is that you can now use it to like auto run. So if you have your, trail to your monster and you hit the auto run button, it will follow that and take you right there. So for those of you whose pet peeve is that, you constantly have to keep tracking these monsters, this can eliminate some of that frustration for you. Additionally, another new feature is that you have a primary and secondary weapon this time around. Instead of just having one loadout and having to change back at your camp, you will now have a second weapon that you can use. And when you're in combat and you go to switch weapons, your mount will actually, you'll whistle for your mount, he'll come by and swoop by, you'll jump up on him, and you'll stick your primary weapon into your mount's holster, and you'll pull out your secondary weapon. And then you can either use it on horseback or mounted combat, or you can jump off and then begin combat with that. And anytime you want to switch, that will, kind of repeat. And it feels really seamless when you do this, as well as dynamic. It's not something that's like instantaneous weapon swap like it is in a lot of games, so it's a little bit more strategic. But the fact that your mount gets involved makes me think that your mount is going to be doing more things in combat and outside of combat than just this as well. I think there are going to be more features revolving around your mount later on. And something that's really, really interesting, which I think is going to change Monster Hunter the most, is the fact that you get a primary and secondary weapon. That you're going to find combinations of primary and secondary weapons that work well for you, and I'm sure there'll be meta, etc. But it's a really fun concept, in my opinion. I am someone who loves using the hammer, for instance, but I like using the bow as well. Now I'll be able to equip both of these weapons and then just switch them while I'm in combat, depending on what I'm facing. Because sometimes, the hammer is just too damn slow for whatever enemy you're fighting sometimes. Try fighting a Diablo with a hammer. That's really hard to do. So maybe I'll switch to the bow in that instance, or maybe I'll use the bow for flying monsters or something until I knock it down, and then switch to the hammer and go to town on it. There's a lot of great combos, and so I can't wait to see what people come up with there and how it changes Monster Hunter. And kind of part of this is armor sets, right? Armor sets have always been a huge factor in Monster Hunter, and their armor piece bonuses are something that people are always looking at when they're putting together their build in Monster Hunter. But now you got to find one that benefits your primary and secondary weapon if you're min-maxing. And this is a really interesting concept because it's not something players have had to do before. And in my case, if I'm going hammer-bow, what set benefits both hammer and bow? I don't know. That's really interesting. I'm not saying this is like a meta setup, but I'd have to look into it and try and find an armor set that benefits both of those to get the most out of that setup. And as far as I know, they aren't adding any new weapon types to the game, so the same ones will be returning, so no surprises there. The real big thing is just obviously mixing and matching your primary and secondary weapons. And another really big change that's like a really small change mechanically, but I feel like is going to be a huge change in the long run, is that now you can hold L2 while you're fighting in combat, and your character will automatically aim the direction that your camera is pointed. So a lot of frustration in Monster Hunter from me, or maybe other players, is when you're going to do like your attack combo, your attack chain with your weapon, and you're inadvertently pointed the wrong direction, and now you're doing a combo that's hitting the wrong direction, and you're completely missing the target, which if you watch any of my gameplay, you'll see I do several times, because I am not the best player at Monster Hunter. However, by hitting L2, you can now point, even in the middle of your combo change, in the direction that your camera is pointing. And a lot of times, this makes your character turn 90 degrees and attack into the enemy and actually connect with your swings. And this can help alleviate some of that frustration, and I think it's a subtle change, but it's one that is going to have a lasting impact for people that, generally find the combat on a little bit on the clunkier side, and sometimes they struggle with that, might find that a bit easier. The pro players out there, this isn't going to be a lot for them, as they're probably not going to have issues with this. But if you're like an average player, this happens to you sometimes, just having that option can really alleviate some of the frustration. And probably the biggest change to combat overall, one that I am so excited about, is that sharpening your hammer now sharpens the head of the hammer and not the handle. I know, huge. So besides the focus on the mount and the weapon changes, the other big thing that Monster Hunter Wilds is going to be known for is obviously the environments and the environmental effects that are happening throughout combat. If you watch my gameplay, you'll notice almost immediately that there is a storm that happens in the middle of my combat. Lightning starts coming down, and the whole look of the game completely changes. And even though it doesn't impact my fight in a seriously dramatic way, I think what you'll find throughout Monster Hunter Wilds is that these environmental effects will, in fact, affect certain boss fights or certain monster fights in a negative or positive way, making it either harder or easier, and should make the game just generally feel more dynamic. It's not just like a day and night cycle, it's like all this other stuff is happening that can happen: rain, sunshine, thunderstorms, etc., dust storms that are really going to impact the way the game feels, making it feel more alive. So this is something I don't think we really understand the full impact or breadth of at the moment, and we will really get to see this probably sometime soon. I'm going to guess that this demo that we played is probably going to be playable to the public soon, just because that seems to be what Monster Hunter has done historically. They usually release a gameplay demo. So I'm assuming that, the public will get to play this maybe in the next 2 to 3 months. We'll have to see when that is, if that's a thing. This is just a guess. I don't have confirmation on that. Another thing that's particularly interesting is that there are packs of enemies that you have to fight. Now, you'll see one of the hunts that I'm actually hunting for an alpha of a pack, and the other pack members are helping defend the alpha. And that can get you in a really, really bad spot. And it wasn't until, further on in the fight that I realized that, you should use dung pods to scare away the other things. And there are ways to spook away or lure away the other members of this pack so that you can face one-on-one enemy, or, if you have a group, 4-on-1, 3-on-1 enemy, etc. So there are mechanics around that as well, which I think makes the game a little bit more interesting and also a little bit more dynamic, as it feels like there are certain monsters that would be in a pack. And visually, the game looks very vibrant. I love the look of the game. You can tell it's clearly improved from Monster Hunter World, and Monster Hunter World looked fantastic on PlayStation 4, but I think Monster Hunter Wilds looks even better on PlayStation 5, as to be expected. But I do have one concern, and I don't know how big of a concern it is yet, just because I don't have a lot of specifics, but that's with the general frame rate of the game. Now, historically, Monster Hunter has had both a frame rate mode, a performance mode, and a fidelity mode. So higher resolution, lower frame rate, or higher frame rate, lower resolution. And I think in the gameplay that you're seeing, I'm probably playing on what would be fidelity mode. I don't know if there's a fidelity mode and performance mode in Monster Hunter Wilds. I'm assuming that there is, based on historic evidence. But you'll notice my frame rate is like right around 30-ish in my gameplay, and even in some places it seems to drop slightly below that, depending on what's going on. This is not my preferred way to play Monster Hunter. I would much rather play on a performance mode with higher frame rates and lower resolution. Graphics mean a lot less to me than performance. I think that is true for a lot of players, particularly with action game combat where it's fast-paced, a lot is happening, and you really want that smooth gameplay. So I don't know if there is a performance mode, but I really, really hope there is one, because otherwise I can see this game having a lot of complaints about performance. So that kind of wraps up my video on Monster Hunter Wilds. This is a game that I'm really looking forward to. We really love Monster Hunter over here at Extra Life. We covered both Worlds and Rise. We're absolutely doing a wiki for Monster Hunter Wilds as well. Can't wait to play more of this. And again, I do think there will probably be a demo of the same stuff that we played, at some point in the near future. I don't have a timeline on that. I was not told that there would be one, but just based on, what I've seen so far, that it's already a complete experience, the demo is, I think it would be easy to transport to the public, and Monster Hunter has historically done this, so I would stay tuned for that. So what do you guys make from Monster Hunter Wilds, having seen other people's gameplay footage from what you've seen here? Are you excited for it? Are you ready for more Monster Hunter? It's been a couple years since Rise. It's been several years since Worlds. Are you ready for that next-gen Monster Hunter experience, or current-gen now? Let me know in the comments below.